Hello, how you doing? I'm Craig Parkinson. You are listening to the Two Shot Podcast. Sit yourself down, pop the kettle on. We're going to have a nice old chat. Who's it with this week? I'm going to tell you right now. How the devil are you? 2019, new year, new podcasts. Oh yes, we are on. And before Christmas, when I had that stinking cold with Jodie Comer, we recorded, myself and producer Griff, obviously. Recorded about 6 or 7 episodes, which we're very excited to share with you. But I had that stinking cold, and there's a few sneezes on Mr. David Morrissey's podcast right now. So, excuse me for that. Don't worry, you won't catch anything. It's all good. We'll get to that in a second. How was your new year? Was it all right? What did you do? Go out? You didn't get into trouble. You didn't know, but please tell me you didn't. Don't go out on amateur night. It's not a good night to go out. Stay in. Do you know what I did? I cooked some terrible food, which I'm still flagellating myself about. Is that the right word? Self-flagellation. Yeah, I was very upset. I don't like it if I cook a bad meal. And I fell asleep watching Graham Norton. Woke up, saw the London fireworks. They were good. Better than normal. A bit like Sydney. And went back to sleep. Woke up New Year's Day, fresh as a daisy. Perfect. Good way to start the new year. So I hope you had a lovely time. Now, it's a bit of a weird one, this, because I want to share something with you, which is something I never normally do. We got an email last week. It's nothing new. We get emails all the time, and we respond all the time, as we do on social media, as you know. But I was unsure how to respond to this email. So I emailed Adam back, who was the fella that sent the email, telling him what I wanted to do, which is read his email out on the podcast. And when I say that, look, this is my worry, it's not yours. Me reading an email out on the podcast is not self-serving or narcissistic or Steve Wright in the afternoon in any way. And for those listening outside of the UK, Steve Wright is a DJ on BBC Radio 2. He hosts an afternoon slot, and he's very famous for reading out texts and emails saying, "Steve, we love the show," to big himself up, and it's kind of naff, and that's not what we're about. You know that. But I got an email, and I said to Adam, I'm going to read it out, and he said it was cool to do that. So I want to do that right now. That's a piece of paper dropping, don't worry about it. So here we go. Dear Craig and producer Griff, I just wanted to send you a quick note of thanks for your excellent podcast. In 2007, I graduated Birmingham School of Acting with a first-class degree, and I felt as though I had my whole life in front of me as an actor. Almost immediately, I got a job doing the tour of Blood Brothers, and then I left and I began to appear in TV shows fairly regularly, from Coronation Street to Alan Partridge, via Emmerdale and the IT Crowd, and I built up quite a nice CV for myself, and I thought I was on the cusp of something. I kind of believed that one killer role, or perhaps a new agent, would see me catapulted into working regularly enough that I made my money from being an actor above all the other things. I remembered the time when I read in at auditions and Vicky McClure was one of the actors and the only one that thanked me afterwards. So you'll have to forgive me. This is where it all starts to get a bit, this is me now and this is not the email. Bear with. Then in July of this year, I began to suffer dizzy spells. I struggled to focus on things in the distance and had trouble remembering my balance. I was due to get married in September, And so I spent all of my savings to see a private neurologist because it would have taken too long to do it through the NHS, and I just wanted to be back to normal for my wedding day. Initially, the neurologist told me that I have migraines and that I was just to give up caffeine and I'd be fine. And I did just that, which was hellish. He also sent me for an MRI in order to confirm this diagnosis. I returned to see him the following week, filled with questions about how long I'd need to be off the caffeine for and when my symptoms would subside. It was at that point he told me that I had multiple sclerosis. It knocked me for 6, as I'm sure you can imagine, leaving me reeling and wondering where my life would go from there. It was also as though the diagnosis itself allowed more of the symptoms to come to the fore, with my balance getting worse and double vision 24/7 becoming my main symptom. In the months that have followed, I've struggled to come to terms with my diagnosis, with one of the major concerns being that I might never act again. Losing your ability to even walk in a straight line, let alone see properly without a pair of specialist glasses, means that few directors or producers will be willing to take a chance on you. My future, which once seemed so positive, has been stripped away from me, and now I'm struggling to make ends meet. Forget making like a full-time living as an actor. And my thanks goes out to both of you, therefore, for allowing me to live my life vicariously through the various guests that you have on your show. It's fascinating to hear about the myriad of ways of which different people found their way to become actors and how their careers have developed over the years. I've no idea what my future holds anymore, but being able to listen to your show has been really important for me in a way that I can't quite put into words. Keep up the good work, both of you. Best wishes. Adam Stevens. Yeah. He says that he can't quite put it into words, Adam, but he really does. So I just wanted to share it with you. I thought it was a really important email that we don't know what life's going to throw at us. Adam certainly didn't. He didn't say in the email whether he got married or not or how that affected anything else. So Adam, I know you're listening, and I just want to reach out, as I'm sure every listener will, and say thank you so much for sending that email. And we just all send you so much love. And, you know, this is a community, this is a support network. We can all talk on here. I remember I said ages ago last year, email in if you've got questions or concerns or problems, and we can share them with this listening community. And that's what Adam's just done. And, yeah, it's kind of bowled us over. So, Adam, thank you for sharing with us. And we send you loads of love, okay? And thanks for listening to that. Sorry. It's quite hard when things like that throw you off, you know, because you don't know how to respond. And we need to be honest with each other. Oh, right. Okay. Episode 71. Here we are. We met David Morrissey in London. He came to meet me at my hotel where I was filming. Full of a stinking cold I was, but he was brilliant. Now, you'll know David Morrissey. He's the governor. He's in The Walking Dead. You might have seen him in Julius Caesar in London on stage recently at the Bridge Theatre. He's a total legend, and he's a lovely, lovely fella. And this is a very beautiful episode, and it goes very, very deep. And I don't know, there's a slight fragility to the episode. I can't explain any further than that. Sorry, I was just scratching my neck there when I was trying to reach for the words. And speaking of reaching for the words, you'll hear David is considered, and I don't mean that derogatory. I mean, when we talk, you'll hear he considers what he says. It connects to his brain and then it comes out of his mouth. Not like me. I wish I had a bit of that. It doesn't. It just falls out of mine, and it's all a lot of rubbish. But it's a lovely, lovely thing, and he cares a lot, and I've got a lot of love for him, and I think after this episode, you will too. This is episode 71 of the Two Shot Podcast with the majestic David Morrissey. Enjoy. Griff was saying to me just before I came down to get you, and I had forgotten about this, that when we first started planning the podcast, we always draw up a list of who, and you were on our first list.
Was I?
Yeah. And now we've finally got it together.
There you go.
After all this time.
Busy man.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, really good. I mean, it's been a wild old year, but yeah, it's good. Good to come to the end now. I'm looking forward to New Year.
Start things afresh.
Yeah, it's got moving into a new house, so all that. So yeah, feeling good.
That upheaval. Although sometimes it's quite exciting, the move.
Actually, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's sort of, I made that decision that I'll throw things away when I unpack.
So take it with you.
So taking everything with me. But actually, I'm finding it really cathartic, actually. And exciting. I'm finding it exciting, yeah.
Do you find that when you start new jobs, do you like that, right, we've finished that job and I've put all that energy and effort into it and we had that character and we had that time and that's gone now? Do you like that feel of starting afresh all the time?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a stationary geek, so every script I have I cut up and sort of, I highlight my stuff. I do all that. So, and then what I will do is I'll put it into a book, an exercise book, quite a big book. And then I'll do lots of notes in the front of that, and then you'll get to the script. So I quite like that buying of the new book, a bit like a new diary, but a new exercise book to start a new character is always quite exciting. I quite like that.
It's like having a new school book for the new term, you're in a new class.
It is, yeah, and that idea, and you never know where it will take you. You know what I mean? That sense of just not sure, not making any decisions, just absolutely sort of having a blank page. And then I'll start filling it with stuff like, I'll read the script lots and lots, but I'll fill it with photographs of things that I just evoke. So a bit of a mood bit.
Yeah.
And I'll start writing a bit of a backstory and stuff like that, and then breaking the script down. And then very often this happens right at the last minute, you'll get your shooting schedule. So you don't really know how it breaks down day by day or week by week until the last minute. And then what I'll start doing is working on my first week's work. And usually what I do is that I don't touch the scenes I'm doing in the first week. What I do is the scenes before the scenes I'm shooting. So I'll always work on the stuff that has happened that I haven't shot yet before I work on the scenes that I'm about to do. So it's always about where I've been rather than what I'm actually doing.
Yeah. And how was school for you growing up, David?
It wasn't great, actually. I was not academic. I didn't really get on with school. I changed schools a lot because it was around about when my parents were moving. So I went from one junior school, which was fine. Well, don't have a lot of memories about that, but I think it was okay. And then we went to this other school, and we were Catholics, and we couldn't get into the local Catholic school, so my mum and dad put me into the local C of E school, which was nice, actually, and very close. But I always knew it was transitory until a place came up in the
Catholic school, right? And where was it? Whereabouts in Liverpool was this?
So we lived in a place called Kensington, which was not far from the city centre.
Right.
And then we moved to Nottingham. It was one of these new estates. So the place we grew up in was condemned, really. My grandmother had been married there when she was like a little girl, when she was sort of 19 or something. She'd been married there. And she'd grown up in that house. So it was quite an old place. It had a...
Excuse me.
No worries. Yeah, it was quite an old place. It had a toilet in the backyard. It's not inside the house. No bathroom.
Yeah.
So it was one of those places, and there was 7 of us in it.
Was there 7?
Yeah, and a couple of cats. So all that was a bit. It was a bit. So it needed to go.
Yeah.
I don't have any romanticism about that. But where they put us was these new estates. They were all springing up all over. Really, there was like places like Netherley and Skamsleydale and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And ours was in Nottingham. And we went there, and that's sort of Dovecot, Old Swan, Huyton area, really. And that was. And my brothers left at that point as well. Really, my brothers had grown up by then.
And where were they off to?
So they were off to university and college and stuff like that. And then I left the C of E school and I went to a Catholic junior school, and that's where I first started doing drama. That's the teacher at that school the drama teacher was really great. And we did The Wizard of Oz, and we did, Joseph and His Amazing Technical Dreamcoat and all the classics. And I played the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz, and I loved it. It was great. And in my class, there'd been a lot of lads who were good at football and stuff like that. And even though I enjoyed football, I wasn't great at it.
Yeah.
But that thing of performing, I really liked. And then I failed my 11+, and I went to the secondary modern that was attached to my junior school. And that was more or less like the school in Kes, really. It was just mayhem. It was just my memory of it was fun.
Just kids running riot.
But we didn't have any learning. There was no. One of the things that was really my big memory of that time is you would never put your hand up in class to answer a question. You would never stand out. Your whole thing. So there was no sense of academic achievement. You didn't want to stand out in a way. Even if you knew the answer to something, you weren't going to be the SWAT.
Keep quiet.
Just keep quiet. Or make a joke or take the piss. That was the thing. And during that time, my dad was very ill. My dad gotten ill when I was about 8, really. And during that time, it sounds like a bit of a violin moment, this, but it's not. There was a point in there that I thought, when was I last happy, And the last time I'd been happy was when I'd done The Wizard of Oz. So I decided to sort of seek out more stimulus like that. And I tried boxing for a bit, and I was never going to be a boxer. I just didn't have the skill, although I loved the world of it, and I loved the training. But I certainly didn't have the killer instinct. And then I discovered the Everyman Youth Theatre, which was attached to the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool. And that was it. As soon as I went through that door, I felt that it was my world, my tribe.
How old were you then?
So then I must have been about 14, 15.
And was this a weekend thing going after school?
So it was Tuesday and Thursday nights, and then sometimes. But what happened was it became all encompassing for my life. That's where I met my friends. And we'd all hang out nearly all the time, and we'd hang out around the theatre mostly all the time. The theatre had a bar downstairs called the Everyman Bistro, and that sort of tolerated us. And we'd just hang out, and then there was a cafe around the corner called Cafe Tabac, which was at the top of Bowl Street. We'd spend like 4 hours over a cup of tea, and we'd just talk and write. And it was the first time I'd met people of different sexual orientations to me, different colour, things like that. It was the first time I'd met people who were very, very different from me, different class sometimes as well. And it was a real mixture. And it was wonderful. And it was that thing for me of, I suddenly got a confidence in myself, which I took back into the education system. I would take it back into school, and suddenly I would put my hand up, and suddenly I would ask questions. And suddenly I was more curious. And that's the thing for me now, is the fact that I always feel that the idea that in our state school system, music, art, drama, they're all seen as soft options.
Yeah.
And it really angers me. It makes me angry, that in the sense that it takes no account of good citizenship. The thing about the arts is it asks you to walk in other people's shoes. It gives you empathetic skills and this concentration on the more academic life. I'm not saying you should ignore that at all, but the more concentration on that, the more I think it's an automaton sort of being that you're creating.
You see, the thing is, the two can work hand in hand, because as you've just pointed out there, you didn't have that confidence in the academic studies to put your hand up, right? Suddenly you're hanging out with like-minded people, you're hanging out with people who are in your tribe, who get you, who feel different, and then you take that back in, and suddenly you're putting your hand up, so that it breeds the confidence. You don't have to do drama at school because you want to go down that path for a career, but it will help.
Totally.
And to shut that door on the kids is terrible.
And also that sense of sure, not everyone's going to be an actor or a painter or a musician, but that education means that you breed good audiences, you breed intelligence, emotional intelligence, you breed people curiosity and appreciation of other things. And the other thing, one of the other things I've always been very, very grateful for is I grew up in a city that took the arts seriously. Liverpool really did. Of course, we all know about its musical history, but it took the arts seriously. It had great libraries and museums and art galleries and stuff like that. And so whenever I told my mates, once I'd made the decision, whenever I told my mates that I wanted to be an actor, it wasn't received like I was an idiot or, I had ideas above my station or anything like that. It was, people accepted it. They didn't know how I would go about it. They had no way of helping me. And my parents, when I told my parents I wanted to be an actor, it's not that they were down on it. It's just that they didn't know how to help me. It was like telling them I wanted to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
They couldn't phone up my Uncle Tony and say, hey, could you help him out? Or,
Even an apprenticeship.
It just wasn't part of our world. So I'm very happy, very grateful for this, as I had to go and find it myself, and it did exist. The other thing is when I went to find it, it existed. It was a bus ride away in the middle of town. That's where the great theatres were, with great people in it. People like Alan Bleasdale and Willie Russell, and then actors like Tracy Ullman was there when I was there.
Was she?
She was just amazing.
Wow.
She was doing Victoria Wood's Talent, and she was just amazing. And and then actors would come around like Pete Postlethwaite and stuff like that, and it just blew me away. It was just great people.
Was it constant education and constant inspiration all the time from being there? Because it was such a creative time at that moment.
And also, amazing because I've met a lot of these actors subsequently and been able to say thank you, because I must have been a pain in the arse. Because I was constantly asking them questions. They'd be there, having their lunch or something, or, having a pint after the end of the show, and I'd be like, hey, I want to be an actor, how'd you do it, how'd you do that, how'd you do this, And none of them told me to get lost, They all sort of helped me. They all said, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, try drama school, get involved in this, So that encouragement, just by not telling me to get lost, was fantastic, And had the great pleasure of working with Pete Postlethwaite a number of years ago, and I was able to thank him, and he was great. It was like really real generosity to somebody who was a snotty-nosed kid, really.
So what was the next step then for there? Were you able to...
Then, when I was about 60, I left school when I was about 16.
And what qualifications did you leave with?
I had an O-level in history and nothing else. I'd failed all my CSEs, as they were called. So I went to a different school to resit my O-levels, and that was a grammar school. And I was aware about how different it was. All boys for a start, but it was really a grammar school that my brother had gone to years before. But I didn't fit in. And my dad, just before I went there, my dad died. So I was slightly like, I don't want this. I don't want it. I'm going to go off and be an actor. I don't want any of this.
Yeah.
So it was like a false year for me. But there was one teacher, Mr. Phillips, who was our history teacher, and he was a genius. He was just great at inspiring you via story rather than dates and times and all that. He hammered those into you. But really it was about stories. And I really responded to him, and he responded to us as well. His class did really, really well. So that was the only O-level I did. But just at that time, the Tory government brought in this thing called YOP, Youth Opportunity Programme, and that was basically to try and get the unemployment figures down. And they would pay companies to bring in young people who'd left school without qualifications, to give them apprenticeships. But actually it was really abused. So a lot of companies would bring you in and just get you to make the tea and send you out for sandwiches, and then once your time was off, they'd get rid of you and get somebody else. But the other thing they brought in at that time was the YOP, was this, Norman Tebbit had made this speech about, when my granddad couldn't get a job, he got on his bike and went looking for a job. So then the government had to back this up about, sort of basically advocating people should break up their families. So they brought in this YOP scheme, which was away from home. So if you got a job like that, but it was in another city, you would get paid 25 quid rather than £23.50. And I went in and I just said to this guy, I want to be an actor. What have you got? And there was a theatre company in Wolverhampton called Zip Theatre Company, and they were looking for people like me, YOPs. And I said, okay. And so that was it. I moved down to Wolverhampton. I got a little bed sit.
And you were like 17 at this point?
About 17.
Crikey.
16, 17, actually. And I had a little bed sit with a baby belling cooker in it and, all that. And I went to work at this theatre company with a couple of other mates from Liverpool who also applied. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener. It was an eye-opener not so much from a professional point of view, but from a personal point of view, but just about how I looked after myself. How I cooked, how I washed my own clothes, how I, my own environment, how I budgeted my life, things like that. And also, how I got from one place to another and all those things. And then in the theatre company itself, we were making sets and doing workshops and so that. It was very much a community-based theatre. And we did a couple of shows, but the big one was we did the pantomime.
Right.
And we would do 3 or 4 shows a day. And we would start in
3 or 4 a day?
Yeah, in a little van. And we would drive around and we'd build the set, we'd do the show, we'd take it down, we'd put it in the van, we'd go somewhere else. And we did that. And because, we were trying to get as much money as we didn't get paid any more money. We just got paid our basic YOP rate. But the theatre company and the guys who ran it, they needed to get the money. So they would put in as many shows as they could. And you would be in pubs, you'd be in youth centres, junior schools in the morning. And then sort of in the afternoon, maybe old people's homes. And then in the evening, you'll be in pubs and clubs.
Right.
And John...
Very different audiences
Very
there.
different. And John Lingard, who was the dame, who was the head of the... the performance would change as the day went on. And probably as he got a bit more bevied himself, actually. But, it got very bawdy in the evening. And it was all very innocent in the morning. And then it would all start again. And it was a great experience for me about, putting a show on your back and just going off and doing it. And then while I was in Wolverhampton, my best mate is an actor called Ian Hart, and he was still in Liverpool. And he'd found out that they were auditioning for this TV show called One Summer, which was about 2 Scouse lads who ran away to Wales. And he phoned me up and said, look, come home because they've got some auditions. So I got on a train, I went home, and the first audition was like Miss World, really. There was about 20 of us with numbers. And the casting directors saw us and just went down the line and said, okay, number 5, number 7, number 12, number 22.
Oh, God, so it was picked like that to start off with.
You can all stay, everybody else goes.
See you later.
And then you would read a line, a couple of lines, then they put you, because it was about 2 lads, they put people together. And that went on, it felt like it went on for months, it probably went on for a couple of weeks. And eventually I got the lead role in it. And it was a life-changing experience.
And you'd never been in front of a camera, though, before, had you?
Never done anything like that. I'd done a lot of theatre with the youth theatre, but I'd never been on camera. And it was directed by a guy called Gordon Fleming, who is sadly no longer with us, who was a big film director. He'd done big movies. And this was just one of the first things that Channel 4 were putting on. And he was a tough disciplinarian, he was no messing about, And that idea of how you tell a story out of chronological order, the idea of continuity. And I think a lot of people then on that job took it upon themselves to teach me and Spencer Lee, who played the other guy, to teach us our discipline, really. And they really did. And I took to it like a duck to water. I just knew then this was what I wanted to do. And the main adult actor in it was, again, someone who's sadly no longer with us, was a guy called James Hazeldine.
Right.
And he was a brilliant actor, really brilliant. And he, again, really took me under his wing, and he taught me everything I knew at that time. I mean, a lot of people were saying to me, look, don't.
It's a very strange noise.
Yeah. So he would say to me, look, a lot of other people would say to me, look, don't go to drama school. You don't need to go to drama school. You've got your equity card now, just go into the profession. And he was the one person who said to me, no, go to drama school.
Did he?
Yeah, because he said, look, it'll give you a career. It'll show you different things that you can do, different ways of working, different plays and characters and stuff like that. And so I listened to Jimmy, thank goodness. And I applied for quite a few drama schools. But I got into RADA. And before RADA, I took the money from one summer and I went travelling. I did a bit of travelling around the world. And then I came back and I went straight to drama school here in London, yeah.
And at that time, would you have got a grant to go to RADA?
So what I did was I got a grant to pay for the fees, but I didn't get a maintenance grant, so I didn't get a grant to live off.
Right.
But thankfully, one summer I still had some money from that. So that paid for me for a while. I worked in the college itself. We did a lot of cleaning in the morning, so that gave us not some money, but it gave us a meal because there was a canteen there. So we cleaned the canteen and stuff. And so you get a free breakfast and a free lunch for that. So that was great. And then I did some bar work around that as well. So whilst I was at RADA. And that supported me. And then just as it was all getting a little bit tense financially, which was going into my finals, they repeated one summer on the telly, and that meant I got this residual check, which was more or less my fee again.
Perfect.
And I was like, I couldn't believe it. That you're paid twice for a job.
Didn't even expect that.
I wasn't expecting it, and it came, and so that meant that I could get through my last term at RADA, but also it supported me coming out into the world for the first year. I was able to sort of take jobs I wanted, and that was great. And then I sort of was able to support myself as well.
How was RADA for you?
I loved it. I really did. I found the first term really difficult.
In what way?
Well, I found it difficult in the sense that I found London difficult. I found London very expensive, unfriendly. The thing about Liverpool is you get on a bus and sit next to them. By the time you get off, you know everything about them.
Yeah.
And they know everything about
Yeah.
you. It's a chatty place. Whereas when I came to London, I'd chat to people and they just looked at me like I'd just, smacked
You didn't
me in
get
the
anything
face.
back.
No, I didn't get anything.
I remember when I first came down, I found it quite an unforgiving city.
Yeah.
Even though I was this wide-eyed sort of 17-year-old from Blackpool, and I was going, the lights, everything. I did find it quite unfriendly.
Yeah, I found that. And just unfamiliar, And rent was expensive and food and stuff. And so that was tough. I found at RADA that I was... My own self-deprecating thing was telling me I didn't fit in, that these people were different than me. Do
you think that was sorry to interrupt, do you think that was a class thing?
Yeah.
From where you were from?
It was class, yeah, it was definitely about that. And it was about me thinking, I'm not good enough for this. These people have a different idea. This is, it's posh.
Yeah.
And I really put myself down in that first year. Well, not first year, but first term. So I would arrive in September. And then we broke for Christmas and I was miserable. And I went back to Liverpool. And I was thinking, I'm going to jack this in. I'm going to sack it off and just stay in Liverpool. And I didn't tell my mom that or my brothers. I was sort of holding it to myself. And I bumped into Paul McGann's mum, who is a wonderful woman. And I just told her. And Paul had gone to RADA. And I just said to her, I'm miserable, And she just said, stick it out. She said that Paul felt exactly the same. Just stick it out. And I decided to give it one more term. And then when I got back in January to RADA, there was a note in my pigeonhole from Paul saying, hey, I'm doing a play at the Royal Court. Come down, So I went to see him, and he was so helpful to me. Not for the first time either. He'd been very helpful to me in the past. And I went to see him in a play at the Royal Court, which was amazing, and then I went backstage and stuff. So then I started to think, okay, I know people here.
Yeah.
And by that time I got to know my other friends at RADA, sort of got to know them better, and that was good. And so I settled. And then I felt I could hold my own. I was doing...
You got some confidence back.
Got some confidence back. We were doing very, classic theatre. We were doing Shakespeare and Molière and stuff like that, and I thought, I understand this. I know what I'm doing. I expect this to be beyond me. But actually, I really loved it. And I love performing, and I loved the dance classes and the music classes and the camaraderie. I really did. And so that was, it felt like I'd really arrived. And I knew then, and I sort of knew it when I was doing one summer, really, that I'd chosen the right profession for me.
Yeah. Did you find it was making friends easy at RADA? Because, people come from all sorts of walks of life and different backgrounds.
It was actually, yeah. I mean, it was intimidating at first, but all that intimidation, as always, was in myself rather than within other people.
Yeah.
And when I met those people, and also RADA had such a mix, So I was in my term, you would look at the term above you, and the term above me, which was a brilliant term, and they all got on very well, and they were fantastic shows that they did. It was Ralph Fiennes, Jane Horrocks. Ian Glenn, Neil Dudgeon, Jason Watkins, Imogen Stubbs. So, there was people from very high parts of society.
Yeah.
And people from places like me, and they all got on, and they were brilliant. And that was a real comfort to me to see that, there was no divide, really. And I loved that. That was great.
Well, we always look at the other people.
Yeah.
Well, if they're doing it, and then I'm from not far from there, so therefore it's
like
possible.
Neil Dudgeon. I mean, watching Neil Dudgeon when I first got in, and he was this great northern actor. Real man, real great. Great range that he had, and I would watch him, and I'd watch him and Ralph Fiennes together on stage, both being brilliant, but from very different parts of society. Really great mates as well. They were really great mates. And I thought, oh, okay, you can do this, And likewise in my term, there was men and women from very different backgrounds and classes and stuff. And we all got on. It was great.
Were you still as curious? Because you always sound to me that you were very curious back in the day, especially when you're at the Everyman, you're asking, you're having these conversations with these fantastic inspirational actors. Were you as curious at RADA?
Yes, I was. And also the great thing at RADA was we were encouraged to go and see shows. So we would go and see as many shows as we could, in the West End. But also a lot of, old RADA graduates and I would come back, and you'd see them, and that was great. So, yeah, it was... and London, I started to use London in that way. I would go to a lot of exhibitions, and obviously you had to look for the free stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a lot on offer, and then I would walk everywhere. I mean, I just walked around London and, do, those whole Dickensian walk stuffs. And then there'd be places like the Scala Cinema. Used to do these all-night shows where they do like a horror all night. And that was great. You'd have a kip during The Shining or whatever and then watch, The Blob. And that was great. And I used to watch a lot of movies there. And being a student, at that time you could get, you could get discounts everywhere. So there was a lot of stuff for me to see, and I really used London in that way. I loved it actually, and still do. I mean, I find London a really stimulating place.
Well, it is, but I think it's interesting your choice of words about how you use it, how you use London, especially at different points in your life. As a student, you're going to use it very differently to how you use it now.
Yeah, but now I use it. I'm very thankful now about its green spaces, that's what I love about it. Richmond Park, Hampstead Heath,
which there are a lot of.
But there's loads of them. Yeah. For a major city, it's brilliant. I mean, I was in New York recently, and they've got the park. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone gets out, but that's a major city with one big green space, whereas we've got so many. And Regent's Park at the moment is what I use mostly, and it's just great. It's so great. So, yeah, I do use the city.
Were you prepared, or were you given any tools in your finals upon leaving?
We had this.
It's a tricky moment.
It is. We had this. As I say, we have old students who come back and talk to us, and Clive Mantle came back to talk to us.
Big Clive,
and he'd left like 3 or 4 years before, and he came in to give us a talk. And usually that talk, the way it was billed was he would talk about, how your agent is, how you work with your agent, how you find an agent, auditioning, stuff like that. And he didn't do any of that. He came back and he taught us how to sign on. And how to sign on, and then if you've got a day's work, how to claim for that day's work without signing off completely. You know, things like that. And it was a really practical sort of... And some people in our town were outraged by it.
Really?
Yeah, they were really pissed off about the fact that he'd done that. And I went, that's brilliant.
I think it's brilliant.
Just exactly what you need. And then he would talk about agents and how you get them and stuff like that. But that was his main focus. And I met him years later and said, thanks very much. He said, I can't remember any of that. But it was brilliant of him doing that. So, yeah, we were sort of guided. I mean, the other thing they do at RADA, and they do it in most drama schools, is you have this one evening called a tree evening, which is where you do two pieces, either a monologue or a duologue or whatever. And they invite all the agents from London and casting directors and stuff. So it's a massive audition, you know, and you know, if you get that wrong, it doesn't matter what you've done in the last couple of years, you know, and that was a good night for me, I have to say. But then you're inviting lots of people to your final shows. In the finals at RADA, like most drama schools, you're just doing shows, really. You're not doing classes, and you're writing and trying to get agents to come along and stuff like that. And I got an agent after the tree evening quite early on, so I knew that in my last 2 or 3 shows, I was secure with an agent. And I got a job quite soon after that. But yeah, I mean, you did get a lot of guidance about how to go out into the world. But nothing really can prepare you like the experience itself, you know, that's the thing.
But it's that exciting moment of graduation that you just want to get out there, you just want to work. And luckily you did get a job straight away.
And it's also that strange thing when you get your first job as a drama school, that if there's a part in it for an old person, it's played by an old person. Yeah. Like not your mate with a grey beard on. And so things like that was really weird. And my first job after drama school was I had to go and do a Nigel Williams play up in Liverpool, at the Playhouse in Liverpool, called WCPC. And it was a brilliant play. And I play this young copper who is obsessed with the fact that, you know, all the people around him are gay and are breaking the law. And he sort of finds out that everybody is gay in the play. And I had to sort of, I had to kiss a bloke. I had to get wanked off by a bloke. I had to dress up as Liza Minnelli in stockings and suspenders from Cabaret. Do that. I had to sort of strip off at the end and sing YMCA by Village People. And this was back in my hometown. And my mum came to see it with my Auntie Pat, and I was like, oh, God. And then afterwards I saw her, and God love her, the only thing she said to me, she looked at me, she went, have you been eating properly? And I was like, oh, thanks, Mum. So that was wild. But yeah, so that was really, really tough. It was a strange show. But it was fun, and it was great to come back to Liverpool, do that. And then after that I did a play at Stratford East, which I loved. And then...
Did you find yourself just constantly learning from job to job?
Totally. And then the big thing for me was then I got a job with Cheek by Jowl.
Right.
And we went on tour for a year, really. And we did 12th Night and El Cid. And it was a tough tour.
In what way?
Well, it was, again, 3 venues a week. And the venues could be like Newcastle, Bournemouth, Bury St Edmunds, you know, so you were just on the road all the time. We had a van with us in it, or the company, which was like a minibus, and we had another van driven by the stage manager with all the set in it. We would have to do the get in and the get out and stuff like that. And it was tough, you know, and it was tough being in a company like that, which was, it was a small company, but you had to be with each other for 24/7, really.
Which is a tough ask for anybody.
Yeah, and there was a lot of fighting, but then a lot of love going off as well. Then a lot of love fighting, and, you know, sort of stuff like that. So it was a big old roller coaster, really. But also we were a hit.
Right.
So we did 12th Night, which was our big show, and that was a massive hit. And wherever we'd go, it would be packed out. So that was great, but it was also pressure as well. It was so crazy. And then we came and we went to the Donmar. We ended up at the Donmar warehouse, and again we sold out there. So it felt good, and you felt like you were at the centre of something really important.
Yeah.
But it was hard work. It was graft, but I did love it. And then after that, I went to the RSC, which again I just adored.
How long were you at the RSC for?
So I was there for 2 years, really. So 2 seasons. So I got to Stratford, and I worked with Deborah Warner, who I really adored. And she was fantastic. And I did King John with her. And I played the Bastard Falconbridge. And that was great. And that was like my first big Shakespeare role. I did a Shakespeare role at the Royal Shakespeare Company. And it was a hit. It did really well. And I thought, okay, this is opening up to me now. I understand this. And my class isn't a barrier, which I thought it was. Again,
but that's taken quite a long time for that
yeah,
to realise that
it
isn't a barrier.
That it would really made me go, okay. I mean, I was still in my mid to late 20s, but I realised, and this was with Deborah, really, Deborah's help, was I realised that there was nothing I couldn't do in classical theatre. It wasn't the domain of posh people.
Exactly.
I felt like I was able to sort of really participate in this great language and these great stories, and also in that season, and also in that production actually was Ray Fiennes, and him and I would have these scenes where we'd have to have this banter with each other, just like these massive verbal battles, and it was wonderful. It was he and I, and I'd always known he was a great Shakespearean actor. I'd seen him at Rod, and he was in the other play was in Much Ado and stuff in the company. But with this play, he played the Dauphin and I played the Bastard Falconbridge, and we would have this standoff, and it was wonderful. It was great, and it was a real eye opener to me of playing with the language. Just understanding it, but also just enjoying it and luxuriating it, and sort of having the whole ability at your fingertips to play, and I loved that.
But if you're given the freedom.
Yeah, it was a really great freedom that Deborah gave us. And yeah, I loved that. And that again was a big hit. So I was sort of on cloud nine, and then I came to the National, and I did Peer Gynt, which Declan Donnellan, who did Cheek by Jowl, who ran Cheek by Jowl, he directed it, and it bombed.
Well, I was going to say, you're dealing with the first hit, the second hit. Yeah. How do you deal when it's absolutely bombs?
So that was the biggest lesson I ever had. And actually, I must say in my life, things that have, it's hard even to call them failures, but things that have not been well received have been where all my great lessons have been learned. And we did Peer Gynt. We had something ridiculous like 16 weeks rehearsal. And it just was crazy. And in the end, I think we left the good play in the rehearsal room. And it was in the Olivier Theatre, it had a lot of bells and whistles on it. There's lots of scene changes and all that. And it didn't do well. And then we had to perform it then. We just, from then on, it opened, not great reviews. We were being in the Olivier, which seats, 2,000 people?
Yeah, it's all massive.
So we come in, there'd be about, 100 people there. Oh. And I was always saying, can't you just get them to sit together? Can't you just get them to sit in the middle, but they'd be all over the place. Yeah. And actually what was great about it was I then really started to play. And my real philosophy then started to emerge that actually, not that the audience don't matter, of course they matter, but in the end what you're doing it for is yourself. That actually there's something inside these stories that you're challenging yourself with. That it's, what am I trying to achieve? Have I done this tonight? You have to be aware of the audience, and you're there to give it to them. But you're driving it, they're not driving it. And that's the thing for me. And in the end, the great thing about Peer Gynt was I loved it because I started to grow and change during the production. I started to change things that I'd been locked into in rehearsal and thought, I don't like this, and really finding new things for me every night that I could challenge myself with and find new light and levity in it, and sort of suddenly find new darkness in it as well. And in the end, I just lived for it. I loved it. I never got to the theatre and thought, oh God, I've got to do this again. It was like, can't wait to get on stage.
Yeah, because if it's a slog, then it's the wrong thing.
That thing of being on stage is really, for me, it's the great thing. I love it. And I love being on a film set, I have to say as well. I just adore it. So it's, that it's not until you're in something that hasn't been well received that God, I really want to do this. Because even then you're still up there. And I really had a ball doing the play.
But even throughout life, not just in the careers, it's the things that don't go to plan.
Yeah.
And that's when we learn, and that's when we grow as humans.
Yeah. And are you up for the fight? Are you up for it? And the other thing, about Peter Gint was that thing of, I'd go on stage and I'd think, this is all I'd ever wanted to do. It's all I'd ever wanted to do. So regardless of what you think of it, I'm living the dream.
Yeah.
This is, from when I was a kid, this is what I want to do. And here I am achieving it. I'm on the Olivier stage at the National Theatre playing the main role in one of the great plays of all time. You mightn't like it, but I'm still here, and that was it. And I loved it.
I suppose if you didn't think like that, and you didn't want to grow and you didn't want to learn, that shit's going to get you down.
Yeah, it really.
And where does that? You don't want to be going to that dark place all day, every day.
No, and I really feel that sense of when I was on that stage, and with an empty auditorium. Who am I doing it for? It's me and the other actors, and we would just get off on it and just really have a great time, and not self-indulgently, but really love what we were doing, and that was great for me.
How do you deal with the darker times? Because obviously it hasn't all been plain sailing, because it can't be, because that's the precarious nature of this.
Yeah, I mean, I inhabit the darker times too much, I think. I think the main thing for me was I always felt that creatively, that there was no pain, no gain, really. I did feel that I had to inhabit the darker sides of myself. And I had a tendency to do that, the melancholic side and the depressive side. So I would indulge that a little bit.
Too much?
Yeah, I mean, that was where my tendency would drag me to, There was lots of things from growing up that I would keep very at the forefront of my being rather than sort of trying to deal with it, There was abandonment stuff and, lots of that. And then I would keep that in me. And I had a real fear and a real suspicion of fun, really, or anything that was sort of up. So that I would have this... Yeah, I would worry about anything appearing to be frivolous. Because what I wanted, what I was searching for, and I search for it all the time, is an authenticity. And I don't think I'm right here. I think I'm wrong in the sense that I always associated authenticity with pain,
right,
and with depression and sort of loss and stuff like that. That anything that was fun and joyful couldn't be authentic, and then that's bollocks.
Yeah.
But that's where I was
at that time.
At that time, that and even doing comedy, I would look for the darker side of it. Really. That's where I would find the truth. So that idea of myself of looking for truth and authenticity would drag me down a very dark place, really. And I would indulge that. It was like a wobbly tooth for me. I couldn't stop sticking my tooth in it, And it was like that thing of just needing to experience pain, self-inflicted pain. I would do that a lot.
And when did you break that cycle, or where were you when you acknowledged that that's what you were doing and that needed to change?
I'm not sure I have, actually, if I'm honest. I think and the acknowledgement is happening now. Definitely, I have an acknowledgement of it, and I can see. Like, I don't drink, so I haven't drank for 14 years, and I think in that sobriety, that I've emerged into some sort of clarity of real thinking. But yeah, I'm still prone to it. I still do that thing of, I will watch people who are in the street who are laughing and joking and sort of, together. I think, how do you do that? Oh, well, it is a bit foreign to me, but I'm working on it, Craig.
Do you embrace happiness?
I find it hard. Yeah, I try to. I do. I mean, I'm much better at it now. In the last 2 or 3 years, I'm much better at it. But for a long time, if I was feeling happy, I would think, "Oh, hang on a minute, this isn't right." It would be an alien feeling, and I'd be trying to work on that. And also, I think there was I never wanted to. I always felt that the idea of being content was creative death. That you being content in your life was the equivalent of stopping.
Right.
And I didn't want to stop. I wanted to carry on searching and discovering and uncovering stuff. And so contentment, slippers and pipe time, was just felt like, it really did feel like retirement. And what I wanted was, I wanted the flux and the mix, and so that chaos and madness, I was slightly indulged in. I was wanting to indulge that and create that. I felt that was where the creative heart of me was in the sort of chaotic dance that I was perpetrating. And I don't think I've totally lost that. And the thing about, for me as an actor, and I mean you know this yourself, is I must like the insecurity of the job, because if I didn't like the insecurity,
I wouldn't be doing it.
You'd be off.
Yeah,
you'd be in a desk job somewhere. So I like the idea that I don't know what I'm doing next year. I like the idea that it could be here, doesn't matter. I like that, but I also like the fact that new characters will come at me and I'll have to work at them and find out about them and sort of find out about their jobs and their lives and, who they are. I love that. And inside there is a real desire for movement and sort of chaos and sort of discovery, rather than sitting back and contentment and sort of relaxation, I guess.
And you've still got that curious nature that you had way back in school, because you had that confidence.
Yeah. And, you would say, and you could say, that underneath all that is a fear of self-reflection too much, a fear of stopping, a fear of looking inward and dealing with the stuff that you haven't dealt with for years and years and years. There is an element of that, for a long time, I didn't want to look at things that had happened to me in my childhood. And so what I did was I would go out, I'd be energetic and looking outward, and new characters, new things. And I think over the last couple of years, I've been able to sort of go, well, hang on a minute. You've been running on empty for a while. So now you have to sort of start building this. And I hate the word healthy. It's not healthy. It's not unhealthy to be the other. To look at a more positive aspect of being a grown-up and a fully rounded human being, I guess.
Do you think sometimes you used to throw yourself into the work to run away from something else?
Yeah, definitely. But I would not tell myself that. I would feel that I was throwing myself into the work to actually uncover, to pick up the rock and look underneath it of myself. It just so happened that underneath there was a very dark place, and I would indulge that. So it didn't feel like I was running away. It felt like I was running into the mess. It felt like I was running into the sort of the depression, I guess. And what I wasn't dealing with was the causes of. Because I didn't want to I didn't want to sort of find out the answer. You know, I didn't want to be cured. I didn't want to be free of it. I felt it was my mojo.
Yeah.
I felt that was my creative hub.
And if you're free of that, then you've got nothing left.
I'll never be able to work again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when I got sober, I thought, if I get sober, I won't be able to work again. I won't be able to work without, you know, indulging myself in a drink or whatever, you know. And actually, that was bollocks. It's you know, I still had all once I stopped drinking, still had all the pain.
Yeah.
So you know, still doing that, but also, you know, from another point of view, that looking at myself, I thought, I don't want to erase this, because this is how I work. You know, these are the questions, and of course, you still have it all.
It's not that. Yeah.
It's not that.
Was there any moment where you thought, because I know what it means to you, and we've already discussed that, so we can tell that, what doing this job means to you. Was there ever a moment where you went, I can't deal with this anymore, it has to go, I have to do something else?
Yeah. Yes, there was, and that was, there's been a few times, if I'm honest.
But really honest. I mean, we all go, do you know what? No,
there's been a few times when I've thought I need to either take a break to sort out personal stuff.
Yeah.
And that lasted 5 minutes of my head, really.
Yeah.
You know, that was an idea I would have and go, I can't do that. But the time I really thought, you know, forget it, was when I did Basic Instinct 2. So I sort of got to a point where I got this major movie with a major film star. I was being paid major money. And I got into that job, and it was like, honestly, it was like you could have told me to be a mechanic or something else. It was like a completely different job from the job I used to.
In what way?
Just how everybody approached the job was different. Those big movies. Time was different. You know, I always hesitate saying this, but I quite like most of our television schedules that we have, because it's quick. They are quick. But I feel like I'm on my toes. I'm on my toes. I think, okay, I'll probably in this scene, if I've done my work properly with a director who knows what they're doing, I can probably get 5 or 6 goes at this. And then we might change the angle and that kind of, but that's probably what. So to get on a film set where you're suddenly doing it 70 times, it just drove me crazy. That, you know, that you had so much time for a scene that you could endlessly discuss it. You could endlessly not turn up, or you could endlessly sort of change the set, or you could... That ability to do everything you wanted sort of killed me creatively. And then there's a lot of money around, there's a lot of egos around. They didn't feel to me to be this collegiate atmosphere which I was used to. One of the other things I love about my job is I get a family in a job. You know, I'll get on a film set, or I'll get in the theatre company, and you'll become so close to those people
so quickly,
really quickly.
Yeah,
and then you're off. You know, like we did on those big films. It felt like that company thing. It wasn't happening. It felt really strange that you didn't see people and you only see them on set. There was never any banter. There was never, you know, discussion. And that felt very strange for me. I felt very isolated. And actually I kept turning around thinking, hang on a minute, this is what I wanted. I wanted these roles. I wanted, you know, big film roles. But it really frustrated me. And at the end of that, I felt quite low. Because in the end, I just thought, God, this is a massive waste of money. And I was quite, you know, there's things that, the money that went on certain things, I was like, that's just ridiculous. And it pained me to see it, you know. Just mad things like the amount of food that got wasted. And it really upset me.
Yeah.
And so I came out of that and then it went down like a fart in a spacesuit, you know. Then it came out and everybody hated it. I mean, and it was ridiculed. And I went to the States to do the junket, and it was panned. I was panned. Everything. And the big thing for me about criticism, when I get criticised, it doesn't bother me if people criticise me and I think, oh well, you just don't know what you're talking about, or you've misread that, but when they criticise you and you think, yeah, and I knew that at the time and I never said anything.
Right.
And that was basic for me, was all the things they picked at, which was script stuff, really, and the way certain scenes were played. I sort of knew it as I was in it, but I was so naive I couldn't go, well, hey, wait a minute. Even though we were doing 70 takes most of the time, I was just thinking, this is killing my brain. I don't know how. So it was a great learning curve. I certainly learnt a lot from it, from a film point of view. But I did walk away from it thinking, that's not the job I want to do. I don't want to do that job.
But also you say that before that's what you wanted, but you didn't know what it was.
No,
what you wanted, really, did you?
But I loved films.
Yeah, of course.
I loved watching those films. And the first Basic Instinct I thought was a work of genius. I loved it. So, they were my entertainment. And I would go and I'd watch movies, and it's such a wonderful thing for me, as it was growing up, was going to those films, going to the Odeon and watching those movies. Great. So to be in one, and it to turn out to be, not a wonderful experience was really heartbreaking, really. I've since had great experiences and done those similar movies and had just a ball because I've known how to negotiate it. But at that time, it was my first one. And I was...
I'm sure it wasn't as chaotic as that sounded.
It was just crazy, really crazy.
Did that change, after that, did it change your perspective on what you wanted from a career?
Not what I wanted from a career, but how I would be inside, how I would create the atmosphere around myself that I wanted. I wouldn't be a hostage to fortune. So, if I was in usually when I'm in the theatre or I'm doing a TV, I can have a discussion with my fellow actors and my director and say, hey, this is not working on this, let's try this, or how do you feel about that, or play, basically play. And on this film, that play wasn't happening. There was a real hierarchical thing going
right
on. And I since then and subsequently, I've been able to sort of fight my corner a little bit, have my voice heard, be a bit more of a pain in the arse, really, I guess, about saying, I'm not happy with that. And that is a different side of me, because when I've worked in the past, it's been, and when you're working with companies, there's a collegiate way of doing it usually. There's
a balance.
There's a balance, and there's a company feeling, and you all get on. You're all there to do the same job. There's a respect. So I hadn't really had to fight for my voice in the past in the way that I did there, and I didn't, and I didn't fight for it. I just let it go. And I trusted people, and then in the end, I thought I need to be noisier here. That was the one thing.
So again, it's still a learning curve doing something like that.
Always a learning curve, yeah. I mean, really, I think the one thing that was different was I saw a waste of money. I mean, I don't care if films cost a lot of money and you're seeing it on the set, you're seeing it on the screen. You can see it. But there was a lot of money there that just got wasted, and I found that quite tough.
Where were you within yourself after that? Was it quite... Because it wasn't the greatest experience, obviously, but did you feel quite deflated?
Yeah, I
as
did.
A person?
I felt I took full responsibility for the terrible reviews, and I took a lot of responsibility for it, and I felt quite exposed by it, really, as well. Yeah, I mean, I got quite a lot of funny stories out of it, none of which I'll tell you now. But I got quite a lot of sort of dinner party chat about it, which made me laugh. But because I spent most of my time naked in the film, which was hilarious. But but I did feel quite exposed and on my own, which I'd never done before. All the jobs I've done before, and since, actually, I would say, not that they're ensemble, but there's a group of people in it.
Yeah.
There's a real company side to it. And in that, I felt like I was right on my own. And that was hard.
And do you read reviews in general?
I do read reviews, yeah. I do. I mean, I did Julius Caesar recently and at the Bridge, and I didn't read reviews for that.
Why?
I just decided not to. I was having such a good time. And actually, you know, when you're in the theatre, I don't think I read reviews for Hangman either. When you're in theatre, you know, you've still got 3 months to do. So, you know, the reviews come out. And actually, a good review can really get you.
Oh, yeah.
Misstep you as well. You know, you can be in a good review and it can say, I love that moment when he goes,
That moment's fucked. That's never coming back.
You're out the window.
Yeah.
Then. So that's the thing for me. So I sort of protect myself from them in that way. Not because, I don't read it. And also, the other thing about reviews as an actor, certainly in the theatre, is they've got nothing to do with you. Because, you know, you're only reading a review if you're thinking of going to see the show.
Yeah.
If you're in the show, you've got to go anyway. So it's like, why read them?
Yeah.
So I didn't read them for that, and I didn't read them for Hangman. I do read them for telly and film, just because...
Because it's in the past, because it's done.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
It's all boxed off. So, and it's about how this show is going to do, I think, you know, what people are saying about it. But in theatre, I tend not to. Because, you know, they can only, good, bad, or indifferent, they can only fuck me up, really.
David Morrissey, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And another episode is done. And what a belter to kick off 2019 with David Morrissey. What did I tell you? Do you know what I mean? It's when you talk with David, there's something beautifully considered about his ongoing conversation, and it's not that he's considered or guarded, it's that he thinks, he filters through his brain, instead of like someone like me who has like a sort of a leaky bucket hole brain when it just sort of spews out. And I love him, and I can't thank him enough for coming on and sharing. And he didn't think that we're going to be delving into the insides of Basic Instinct 2, which was a belter of a moment. So that's it. We're done. We're out the traps. It's 2019. We are on the next. I'll tell you now, right? The next, I think 6 or possibly 7 episodes, certainly 6, are all female. We're going some amazingly strong, incredibly inspiring female artists are coming on throughout January and into February, and you're going to absolutely love them. I guarantee it. So look, until next week, stay safe, look after yourself, be kind, not only to yourself, but be kind on social media. I'll talk about this next week. I don't have time to get into it now. The best advice someone ever gave me was, don't get into any sort of argument on social media. There is no point. It's not good for your health. Okay? Mute, block, get out. And if you're very good, one time I might tell you a story when I first went on Twitter and I was advised to come off because of something I said. I'll leave that with you. Until next week, I've been Craig Parkinson. He's been producer Griff. And this has been the Two Shot Podcast. Take care. Bye-bye. The Two Shot Podcast is presented by me, Craig Parkinson, recorded and produced by Thomas Griffin for Splicing Block. Our brilliant music is courtesy of Then Thickens. Cheers.